The Uncle Tim Show on Vintage Radio 107.7.
That is correct, folks, and thanks for tuning in to the Uncle Tim Show, Vintage Radio 107.7 WQUD, Erie Quad Cities, and I'm really excited. Got a special guest on the show today. I've got Mary Schmich, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Chicago Tribune. She is an American journalist. She's been, I'll tell you what I know about Mary. She's been with the Trib since 1985. She sat, I believe, behind my older brother for a while, and I've got a couple comments from him. Anyway, Mary is going to be talking about her column from 1997, Wear Sunscreen. I am really stuck on that, and so are some of you listeners ever since I played it. Anyway, Mary, are you there?
I am here.
Oh, I got to thank you so much for calling in today, because I know that things are different around the Tribune now. You are on furlough right now.
Yes, I am on furlough. You know, when they started putting the Tribune reporter, the unionized staff on these intermittent 3-week furloughs, I had to look up furlough, because I always associated that word with, like, being in the Army, and furloughs was fun, right?
Right.
This didn't just mean, oh, you're laid off for a week and you won't be paid.
Is that what it is, week on, week off, or how is it working for you?
Yeah, we've had to take 3 weeks, each of us, but, you know, staggered intermittently. So I'm on my third of my prescribed 3 weeks, which means I'm manically cleaning my house.
I hope you get a chance to do something fun for your furlough, and that's why we're doing this on the first day. Maybe you'll have a chance to kick back or get out of town or do something.
Exactly. I'm trying to figure that out.
Well, before I even get started, I'll tell you what my brother had to say. He said that he was in the cubicle right in front of you, and every once in a while he said that you would test out an idea for a column on him, and on a rare occasion, he would get to show up blindly in one of your columns as a guy I know said.
A guy I know, right. I call him Maury.
Maury or Mo.
Or Mauricio. So at some point, the Tribune offered free Spanish lessons to anybody who wanted to take them, and Mauricio and I both started taking. He didn't last at it very long, is my recollection, but from then on, he became Mauricio to me.
Yeah, he's just Mo to all of us siblings now. There's 7 of us kids, and tell us just a little bit about you. I think you've got us beat.
Yeah, I come from a family of 8 kids, and I'm the oldest. I'm the pushy oldest sister. My mother had 8 children in 10 years, no twins, 1 ovary.
Ooh, so brutal. I saw an interview where someone asked you if you fought. You said, of course, I had brothers. Everybody fights.
That's true. I mean, I do credit coming, A, from a large family, and B, from a family full of boys with my ability to, you know, push my way through the world.
So, being from Georgia, how'd you end up in Chicago?
Let's see, what's the shortest possible version of that story? We moved to Arizona when I was in high school. I wanted to get my butt out of Arizona, and so I went to college in California, wound up getting my first journalism job there. The editor went to Orlando, so I went to Orlando, and it was a paper owned by the Tribune Company. And someone called me up one day at my desk in Orlando and said, do you want to come work at the Chicago Tribune? And I took out my Rand McNally Atlas, and I traced the line up from Orlando all the way to Chicago, and I went, man, that is really far north. And that's how I got here in 1985.
1985. Now, you didn't start writing a column for the Trib until 92, is that correct?
Right. So I was in Chicago for a couple of years, and then I was offered the job being the Southern National Correspondent for the Tribune. So I moved down to Atlanta, and I worked there for 5 years, and then came back up in 92 and started writing a column.
I can't imagine writing a column. Let's see, since 1985, and how often would your columns run?
My columns run 3 times a week.
Oh, that is a lot of columns. I can't imagine. Well, you know, the pressure of coming up with all these columns now. I don't read the Trib as much as I used to, but my 2 favorite people are, and I'm not just saying this, would be you and John Cass. So
in combo there, yeah.
You did write a comic strip for 28 years, is that right?
I took over the legendary comic strip Brenda Starr, which was invented long before I was born. It was started by a woman named Dale Messick. I think it was the first syndicated comic strip by a woman. So she started Brenda Starr. It was about a woman who was a reporter, which in those days was pretty radical, right?
Right.
Brenda had many adventures, and many girls of my generation grew up spreading the big old Sunday comics pages out on the floor of the living room on a Sunday morning. And I remember so clearly doing that and just thinking Brenda Starr was the most exciting person in the world, never dreaming that one day I would be a reporter or that one day I would be writing her crazy adventures.
How cool to be able to act out whatever you want through Brenda Starr.
Well, yes, that's true, but it's kind of like saying, you know, how cool to write a column 3 times a week. And it is. Both of those are very cool. But the relentlessness of the deadlines some days diminishes the cool factor, right?
Oh, I can't. I should run the numbers, but how many columns have you written? Can you give me a ballpark?
Oh, no, I can't, but it's certainly in the thousands.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure. Now, you won a Pulitzer. What was that for?
It was for a collection of columns from 2011, so I won in 2012.
One of my favorites, which I highlighted, might have been included in there, Dad's Lesson on Giving. The ice cream.
Oh, yeah, that was in there.
So that one, and I'm not sure what year it was. You wrote one for Father's Day about growing up with a difficult dad. Was that recently or not?
Yeah, that was recently, though that was not the first time I have tackled the topic of growing up with a difficult dad. And it's so interesting. I got, a couple hundred emails at least from people saying, you described my father. And, just about the complex web of emotion that many of us have growing up with a father who drinks too much, who is not kind a lot, and yet who also had many fine qualities, and who, I joke that my dad made me a feminist because he raised me as if I were a boy, even though he couldn't stand the women's libbers. And he said to me once, Mary Teresa, you're no women's libber. You just think like a man.
Well, you did really get to me when you kind of dedicated the column to all the dads that wanted to be the best dad ever. So you have a way of really getting to me. And Wear Sunscreen didn't just get to me. I have played Wear Sunscreen, and I remembered a lot of people forgot about it. I've got people calling saying, could you please play whatever that was about the sunscreen again? So I want the whole story on sunscreen. We all want the whole story. I know the story, but I want to hear it from you, the sunscreen story.
Okay, I'm going to try to give you the pithiest version of the sunscreen story.
All right.
Yeah. So, 1997, the end of May, it's a Friday. I'm walking to work, which I often did along Lake Michigan. It was my third column of the week, and I just had no idea what I was going to write about. I was feeling very distressed by that. And I glanced over, and I saw this young woman, early, mid-20s probably, sunbathing. And I thought, oh, my God, I hope she's wearing sunscreen, because I didn't at that age, and it really shows. So I kept walking, and I was just kind of laughing at myself as I was walking. And I thought, I've reached an age, I think I was 42, where all I want to do is give advice to young people. And I thought I was laughing at myself for that impulse. But then I thought, well, it's graduation season, so I suppose for my column I could write a mock graduation speech where I, am going to dispense advice to young people. So I kept walking. I got to Tribune Tower, went upstairs, got a cappuccino and some M&Ms, and just sat down and spent 5 or 6 hours.
All that good advice in that short period of time?
Yeah, we've all got stuff stored up in us, and the beauty of Deadline is that it just forces you to excavate the stuff that you've got in you, right? It's not like I had to find anything new. I just had to get the old stuff out. So, I finished the column, and I kind of liked it, I had some deep feeling about it. I went home, and, it ran in print on that Sunday, June 1st, 1997. I got a lot of really nice snail mail on it. Again, some people had email, but not a lot in those days. And that was that, and then I wrote another 3 columns the next week, and 3 columns the next week, and the weeks went on. Somewhere toward the beginning of August, I opened my email, and I had started getting emails from people saying, something very strange just happened to me. I received an email from someone, and they forwarded me Kurt Vonnegut's graduation address at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology this year. But I remember reading this in your column a couple of months ago. What's going on? And of course I had no idea what was going on. My first response was to laugh out loud and think, what? And then I got an email from another journalist saying he'd gotten it, I think, from his sister in Denver. And he said, you have a problem, don't you? It looks like you plagiarized Kurt Vonnegut.
Uh-oh.
And at that moment, it wasn't funny anymore. I had this jolt of panic, and you hear stories when people have plagiarized, and they will say, I went into a black hole. I didn't even know I was doing that. And my first thought was, oh my God, did I? Did I go into a black hole? And,
Panic attack.
Yeah, no. I was walking to work. I saw the woman sunbathing. The M&Ms, the cappuccino. I remember it all totally clearly. But I also realized I needed to clear something up. So I went to work the day that I started getting these emails, and I explained to one of my editors, what was going on, that I needed to try to find Kurt Vonnegut. So I set out trying to find Kurt Vonnegut. Well, good luck trying to find Kurt Vonnegut, period. And then especially in August, when everyone in New York is on vacation, so I tried his publisher, nobody's there. I went to a book reviewer in L.A. I called Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and got the PR person, and she just laughed, and she said, oh my God, that was you. We keep getting calls about that. People who want to reprint Vonnegut's graduation address. And of course, he wasn't our speaker. Kofi Annan of the UN has been their graduation speaker. So, it just got weirder and weirder. Finally, through one of the correspondents in the Tribune's New York bureau, who's very plugged in to highbrow people, I got a number for Kurt Vonnegut at his house in the Hamptons. So I dialed this number. I was sitting in that desk that I occupied right behind your brother, and I called, and Kurt Vonnegut answered. And then I was like, oh my God, this is Vonnegut on the phone. What am I going to say? So I started to explain who I was, why I was calling, and he barked a laugh. And he said, oh, that's you. He said he'd been getting calls from people congratulating him or asking to reprint it. And, of course, he had zero clue what they were talking about. I at least knew where those words came from. They came from me. But now his name is attached to something he has never heard of.
He's getting praised for something he has no idea.
Exactly. So then I wrote a column that day explaining how I'd reached Kurt Vonnegut, and this wasn't Vonnegut, and this is just an example of how things can go really weird in that newfangled thing called the Internet. Because, again, this was one of the first viral things on the Internet. It's hard for people to remember that.
Right.
It was life before the Internet. But 1997, this was all new, right?
Yeah.
And then a while later, I honestly don't remember how much later, I get a voicemail. It's a guy with an Australian accent who says, Mary, my name is Baz Luhrmann. I'm a movie maker in Australia, and I have come across your Sunscreen Speech, and I have an idea for the material, which is such a perfect movie maker phrase, right?
Yeah.
I have an idea for the material. This is not how journalists talk. So Baz, who has become much more famous since then, I actually knew who he was because he made a little movie called Strictly Ballroom that I'd seen and loved. And he'd made a movie called William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet with a very young Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
But otherwise, he wasn't really famous then. And so he had this idea. He was putting together a compilation of music that he had used in his movies. And he had a thought about putting these words over a piece of music he had used in his Romeo and Juliet. So I, of course, didn't actually own this. The Chicago Tribune owned it, and, had to go through a lot of negotiations with them. But Baz wound up turning it into a spoken word song. And he released it in Australia. It became the top hit of the summer, which was our winter, I think. And again, I thought that was the end of it. And then some time passed. And I learned that a radio station in Santa Monica, California, had started playing this thing by Baz Luhrmann. But then, and this is where the tipping point comes, a radio station in Portland, Oregon, cut the song from 7 minutes to 5 minutes, and you can play that on commercial radio. So it became a cult hit in Portland. Now, it still took another step to really break through. The New York Times Magazine did a little piece about this cult hit in Portland, Oregon, and that broke the whole thing open. Because all of a sudden, now that the power of an old-fashioned newspaper, now that the New York Times has recognized it, every DJ in America is calling me. They were all calling me, hey, Mary, this is Joe from KKZZ, and
How cool is this?
And then it had a very, very happy life here in the United States, and then it was released as a single in England, and it went to number one.
Now, how cool is that?
Yeah, in the summer of 1999.
Number one hit in several countries from what I am seeing.
Yeah, and then it got translated.
Yeah, what I was seeing was it was very obscure here until those events that you talked about, and then it exploded here in the States.
Yeah, just had this very slow build from another newspaper column from a columnist that no one outside Chicago had ever heard of to, one step at a time. It took on this wide, long life.
The column that will not die. I personally think this is very Pulitzer-worthy. It's that good. You know why it's so good to me is it's so emotional. And some of these comments online about people wishing they could go back and talk to their former self, people posting it on their refrigerator, raising their kids. One said, I grew up playing this for my kids. I am now playing it for my 4-year-old granddaughter. Some of these comments are just great. It's so emotional.
Yeah, I have to say, it has really been one of the most gratifying things in my life to just see how you put some words down, not even quite knowing what you're doing, but they do come from someplace, right? That's one of the beauties of writing. There's stuff in you that when you put it out there, you don't quite know what you're putting out.
Well, you dredged up some amazing lines. I'm looking at, I just put down a few of my favorites, about you go back when you were young, you looked fabulous. You're not as fat as you imagine. That really grabs people.
Right. But it's interesting, though, because in the early days of this, when people were trying to figure out how, it got attributed to Kurt Vonnegut, I remember someone sniffing, well, I knew it wasn't written by a man because a man never would have said you are not as bad as you imagine. And that's probably true.
Yeah.
Because, I think that's something that, women are likelier to have struggled with.
The one that can actually make me tear up. I lost both my parents in the last 3 years, and they made it to 95, but get to know your parents. You never know when they'll be gone for good. That is so true. It's so easy to say, tomorrow I'll go over there, or next week. And you just don't know. And the part about the siblings, it just grabs me. I read somewhere in an interview where you said it's not totally timeless. I still think it is. The old love letters and the throw away your bank statements, save the love letters. That was just stellar material. I'm going to throw one more out there. People not knowing what they want to do. And you saying some of the most interesting 40-year-olds still don't know what, and how things are just chance. Wow. Powerful stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this idea that, your choices are half chance. It's just so true. And I think that we all, no matter how old we are, need to be reminded of that. We do have volition. We do make choices. We, I think, have some control. But, so much of what we do and what happens to us is not within our control.
Right. Like nowadays. Whoa.
Like nowadays, yeah. Yeah. Within limits, we can choose how to respond to what's happening to us right now. But we didn't have any choice about its happening.
Right. Here's one that says, this always makes me cry. The truth is hard to take, I guess. Oh, it's all such an emotional song. I'm bringing it back, Mary. It's going to make a new explosion.
All right.
It got changed into a class of 99 version. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I think, again, I didn't even know this until I listened to the Switch to the Pop podcast recently. I think there have been versions of it that are updated even beyond 1999. But 99 was the first big popularized Baz Luhrmann recording of it. And, yeah.
Well, it's the perfect graduation. And I think people even ripped you off and tried to pass it as their speech. I think I read somewhere where that happened. Is that true?
Yeah, there was a high school principal who, as I recall, got fired for giving this as her own speech, not attributing. There are others who modified it just a tiny bit, but not enough, to be honest, who didn't get fired. It's just a reminder that, when people actually have to give a graduation speech, they freak out. And it's like, oh, my God, what am I going to say? I have to be profound. So I'll just rip this other thing off.
Tell them they better be careful. You'll sick Kurt on them.
Right.
Well, there was one other thing in there that was attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. Wasn't there one of your...
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Do one thing every day that scares you.
Yeah.
So that started going around, attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. And I tried to track it down at some point, and I think it was a college newspaper. I'm not going to name the college, but that started with that misattribution, and then it went around, and then it started making its way onto buttons, coffee mugs, and that's when this really got under my skin, because people were selling that quote.
Oh, man.
Attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt. And I even called an Eleanor Roosevelt expert once who was kind of nasty to me. And I said, look, I really want to know, did Eleanor Roosevelt ever say this? Because I don't think she did. I know I said it, but I would like to know, if in fact I had inadvertently pilfered a line from Eleanor Roosevelt. And this Eleanor Roosevelt expert, she said, well, it's certainly something she might have said. I said, well, no, that's not my question.
Yeah.
My question is, did she say it? And this woman said, well, she said a lot of things like it. I said, no, that's not my question. did she say, do one thing every day that scares you? And then a guy named Quote Investigator, who runs a good, quote site where he tries to track down origins of things. He pretty much vindicated me that, there is no evidence that Eleanor Roosevelt ever said that. She said some things about fear, but...
That woman that wouldn't answer your question sounds a lot like my dad. We could ask my dad the same question 5 times, and you would never just answer the question. Sounds just like him. I've got to ask, you've been at the Tribune now since 85. You've got to have seen so many changes there.
I have, obviously. But, it's like living life in general. You often forget how much change you've lived through. You're just living in the moment. So when I came to the Tribune, there was no email. There was no digital. There was no website. It was a huge newspaper, by today's standards. It's gotten a lot smaller. It's also gotten a lot scrappier, I have to say. It's very tempting these days to just lament everything that's lost.
Right.
Newspapers, and a lot has been lost. But, the young people that I work with are as good as the young people I've worked with have ever been.
Well, that's good to hear.
But they don't get paid fairly. We used to get paid fairly. We used to be able to imagine, working our way up through journalism. The finances of newspapering have changed enormously. Used to depend on ad revenue. And when the Internet came, Craigslist took away classified advertising.
Oh, yeah, the Internet. Plus all the stories on the Sunscreen song. If it's on the Internet, it's got to be true, too. Don't forget that. Hey, this is a radio station. What kind of music do you like, Mary?
I have a very eclectic set of tastes. I play a couple instruments, so a lot of what I play is not necessarily what I listen to. When I'm playing, I play like classical or big band and 1940s and that kind of stuff. When I listen, I still love the old singer-songwriters. I could still listen to Nancy Griffith all night. I listen to Oscar Peterson, jazz piano. I listen to some Brazilian music.
Well, you're a piano player.
Yes, as opposed to a pianist. I am a piano player.
Oh, okay. Well, you have many hats, many talents.
Do you play an instrument?
No. No, I wished I did. I wished I played the trumpet so I could play taps. I've always wanted to be able to play taps. There's another thing that always gets a tear out of me.
I bet you could learn to play.
I probably could. How come when you retire you never have enough time for anything? That's because I found this little gig. How about you? Do you see retirement on the horizon?
No, but people ask me all the time.
Do they? Well, I'm just another one.
It's hard to imagine for me not working and not engaging the world, but in that.
We need your column.
Well, at some point the choice could be made for me, Tim.
Yeah, that's the world we live in nowadays, isn't it? It's so crazy. That's why I try to run a happy show here, because if you want to get bummed out, just turn on the news. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. 4-hour show every night. It's like writing a column. I'm under pressure.
That is a lot.
Oh, I find a way to fill it, though. There's news you can use, news you can misuse, birthdays, and, whatever else, and a little bit of everything musically. It's all fun, though, because people are sick of bad news. So try to keep it pretty light here on the Uncle Tim Show. Sunscreen, Wear Sunscreen, the song, is never going to die. I've only played it a couple times, and people are so touched by it. It's, and I can't do the 5-minute version. It's got to be the 7-minute version, all the music in there. And you got to love the fact that people want to hear this. They need to hear it.
And I will say that as far as the recording of it, Baz Luhrmann just tapped into some sound that was the perfect vehicle for the words. And I don't fully understand from a sonic perspective what he did, but the music that he put it over and the voicing of Lee Perry, who is a Australian voiceover actor. Everything came together in this, not to be too corny, but just almost faded way. That just all the elements.
Well, I'm glad they realized brilliance. The column is brilliant.
Well, thank you.
So, well, I'm going to be wrapping things up here, but I want to say that no pressure on this one now, but do you have a favorite restaurant? Somebody told me to ask you this.
My favorite restaurant?
Yeah,
Gemini, of course.
Yeah, I'm fishing for
Right
Gemini. my daughter and son-in-law's restaurant. So,
I love Gemini.
Yeah, we have not been in there for so long. Things are finally starting to open up. I hope things really can get back to somewhat of a normal.
Yeah, I walked past the other day. I mean, I've had so many memorable dinners at Gemini, inside and outside, but I especially love their terrace. And when I walked past and saw that the terrace was open again, it just lifted my heart,
Yeah, I'm going to be interviewing Ryan about his restaurants. He got a couple more irons in the fire, so you'll have a couple more to choose from, it sounds like. I didn't wear sunscreen, though, Mary. I have to throw that in there, and my skin shows it. I'm a sun lover, but I didn't start reading the Tribune in time. I'm too old. I'm older than you.
Yeah, when we were growing up, at least I did, slathered ourselves in baby oil and went outside, lay out, as we said. Let's go lay out.
Might as well get under a magnifying glass while you're at it.
Right. Oh, we learn things as we get old, Uncle Tim.
Yes, well, I can't thank you enough for taking some of your furlough time to be with the Vintage Radio audience, but thanks so much.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you. I'm going to go back to cleaning my house.
Well, the song is Never Gonna Die, and try not to clean too much. Life is too short. Have a little bit of fun.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And there you go, folks. What a wonderful woman. What a wonderful song. You have not heard the last of that song on my show.